Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TV video. 10.3 has been quite the controversial patch with the removal of the spatula from the carousel. Due to that, a lot of the compositions from 10.2 that required a spatula have fallen out of the meta and new builds have popped up. We're here to break down that meta, so let's get into it. But before we begin, please don't forget to click our links in the description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We're hosting many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting news to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TV social media pages. All right, let's jump back into the video, starting off with the first carousel. The best components to grab are going to be sword, bow, chain vest, gloves, with Rodder tier as strong second choices. Cloak and belt are definitely on the lower end of priority. What's great about the current meta is that there are a lot of components that are useful, so you should be able to get something good. Now, let's get into the early game. There are quite a few strong options for items to make early on, but Bramble Vest is one of the best in the early game. Maokai with Druid and Leona with Warden are two great choices to give the Bramble Vest, as Druid and Warden champions live long times in the early fight and get a ton of value from the Bramble. Static Shiv is fantastic for Rangers late in the game, and Rage Blade goes well on several different carries in the current meta, such as Azir, Kindred, and Ashe. Infinity Edge was nerfed in 10.3, so it's not often you want to make it right away, but it still goes well with Twitch in the Rangers comp. Hand of Justice is an all-around useful item to build for carries, but the main reason it's become so popular is due to YASUO coming up in the meta. Let's talk about leveling and economy for 10.3, as it has changed slightly due to there being less gold drop and a significant change with the removal of spatula from the carousel. Due to that removal, the popular strategy of intentionally losing rounds early has lost a ton of its effectiveness. That said, it's still okay to go on a loss streak for extra gold, or if you want a particular item on Carousel 2.4. While your goal is to have 20 gold on 2.5, it's okay in 10.3 if you don't have that, and instead make sure to grab pairs and strong champions. Make sure to level to 5 on 2.5, as keeping up with good leveling curve is important for hitting 3 and 4 cost champions. If you're on a loss streak or playing a hyper role composition, then you do not need to level on 2.5. Whether you leveled or not, from 2.5 to 3.2, look to build up your economy, as you'll be leveling to 6 on 3.2 as well as rolling. Try not to roll away all of your gold, but it is important to stabilize it this round by hitting a few upgrades and finding strong champions. Aim to roll down around 30 or 20 gold and no lower than 10. You can level on 3-1, but only do that if you have a lot of gold from win streaking. Before we move on to the mid game, let's go over early game champions. While your early game is focused on hitting pairs and looking for strong early traits like Woodland Druids or Predators, there are a few strong champions you're going to want to buy if you find them. The champions to look for are Kindred, Azir, Sion, Varus, and Ezreal as great early and mid-game champions. Azir is currently the best carry throughout the whole game, with Kindred, Sion, and Varus being strong for the Ranger or Shadow Inferno builds. Ezreal is a great item holder, especially for those Ranger items. All right, next we're moving on to the mid-game. The pace of the game is much quicker now than in past metas, with rolling at level 6 being standard. If you're win streaking with high health, you don't have to roll at 6, but in most cases you will want to stabilize at this stage. From round 3-2 to Wolves, make sure to save gold. If you do not roll at 3-2, you can go to level 7 on 3-5 after the carousel and all in. This can net you a strong power spike while others haven't leveled yet. Otherwise, level to 7 on 4-1 and roll away. Try not to spend all of your gold on rolling, but if you're below 50 to 40 health, you'll likely need to all in to survive. Now it's time to jump into a few of the viable mid-game compositions, starting with Shadow Inferno. The core of this composition is 3 Shadow, 3 Inferno, with Kindred, Sion, and Malzahar as the Shadow champions, with Varus and Annie being the typical ones to round out the 3 Inferno. Kiana is a great 3rd Inferno if you got lucky enough to have the Inferno map. Leona and Karma are also easy additions at this point of the game, and you can look to play Mystic if you find an early Master Yi. Sion and Kindred are the most important pieces for this build, so always scout to see if there are other Shadow players or if anyone is contesting Kindred. You will want to roll a bit at level 6 just because hitting Kindred 2 or Sion 2 is absolutely key to stabilizing, but the bulk of your rolls will be at level 7, so don't roll too much at level 6. Look to give Guardian Angel to Scion and Kindred can hold an assortment of items, though Rageblade is one of the best. Moving on, let's talk about the new build that popped up in 10.3, the YASUO carry. The basic variation of this YASUO carry consists of 2 Desert, 2 Cloud, 2 Lunar, 2 Mystic, and 2 Blade Master. Your core is going to be YASUO, Sivir, Azir, Janna, Karma, with your last 2 spots at level 7 being quite flexible. If you find a spatula, look to turn Azir into a Blade Master. Leona pairs well with this build since Lunar boosting your team's damage output is quite useful. You will want to roll a bit at level 6 for this build since Azir and Karma are quite contested, and YASUO should be easy to get 2-starred at level 6. Do not overroll, as you do want to get to level 7 and 8 for this build in order to get a top 4. Good items to give YASUO include Hand of Justice, Guardian Angel, and Bloodthirster, and Azir should be given a Rageblade. Back to another common mid-game composition, let's go over Rangers. Rangers has a lot of ways that you can get to the mid-game, but the core will be Kindred, Varus, Ashe, and Twitch for the Rangers, with Braum, Malphite, or Leona for frontline. It's possible you won't have a Twitch or an Ashe at this point, so using Ezreal as your item carry is perfectly fine to do at this stage of the game. You also don't have to run 4 Rangers at level 7 if you have a strong frontline to play or if you hit an early Taric. Braum is one of the better tanks that you can play before finding a Taric, and Leona works well because adding Karma is a must with the Ranger build late game. The items are Rageblade with the static shiv that goes on Ashe, but Twitch still does work with items like Infinity Edge, Last Whisper, or even a Rageblade of his own. Be sure to scout a lot when going for Rangers, as you need to know how contested the champions are. You won't be rolling much at level 6 because this build is meant to go for the late game, but keep tabs on how many Kindreds are taken and whether anyone else is holding on to Rangers. While your backline is important, your frontline is even more important, so anyone hitting early Tarics or Singed you must be aware of. The last mid-game composition to talk about is Summoner Assassin. This build consists of 3 Summoner, 3 Assassin, and has made a comeback in 10.3 as a strong meta composition. Azir is one of the strongest champions in the game at the moment, and certainly the best mid-game carry. Give him a Rageblade and pair him with Karma to carry you through to the late game. There are several variations that you can look for in this build, but the core champions are Azir, Yorick, Kha'Zix, and Karma for the mid-game. Azir is heavily contested, and this build does not work without him, so make sure you scout at level 6 and 7 to see if anyone else is picking him up. You can roll at 6 to look for Azir's, otherwise roll at level 7. This build works best when you can smoothly transition to level 8, so don't wreck your economy too much. Yorick is definitely less contested than in 10.2, so you should be able to get him 2-starred. Kha'Zix and Karma may be difficult to get 2-starred, but as long as you have them in, even as a 1-star, you're gonna be good for the mid game. Time to make our way into the late game. This is where you want to try and complete the build that you're looking for. Look to level to 8, generally the round after Raptors, unless you decide to fast 8 in the mid game. That isn't very common right now unless you've been hard win streaking the entire game. From level 8 onwards, it's about gauging how greedy you can be versus how much you need to roll to hit upgrades. While level 9 is obviously the end goal for most games, it's okay to remain on level 8 to roll, or if you're too low on health, to safely greed to level 9. Around the 20 to 30 health mark is when you're in kill range after 2 normal losses or 1 really bad loss. So if you're at that health, it's often best to roll. If you're at that health and on a win streak, you can usually greed and save the gold to level. Now let's get right into it with late game compositions, starting with 6 Inferno. This is a common late game transition for the Shadow Inferno mid game build. Inferno Lux does make this transition easier, but the core will be 3 Shadow with 6 Inferno. Kiana is fantastic on the Inferno map. Otherwise, the 3 additional Infernos you added in the late game will be Amumu, Brand, and Zyra. Master Yi can be played instead of a Malzahar, which lets you add in Mystic at level 9. If you do find a spatula, you can look to make Scion one of the Infernos and take out the Zyra. While 6 Inferno is the more common transition, the other variation of Shadow Inferno is 6 Shadows. Shadow Lux is preferred for this transition, though it can be done without her, but it's better when you do, as you free up one champion spot to fit in Mystic. If you don't have the Lux, you'll be playing Vigar, Senna, and Master Yi to fill out all of the 6 shadows with 3 Inferno. Mystic is a great addition at level 9 since you will be playing the Master Yi as one of the 6 shadows. The late game win condition for either variation of Shadow Inferno is definitely Kindred 3 or Scion 3, as most games finding Lux is not going to happen. Any variation of the late game Shadow Inferno can struggle into crystals, so always position your Kindred with that in mind and try to burst down a non-crystal champion first. Back to another late game transition for the mid game build is YASUO carry. A common transition will be using 4 Blade Master with the addition of Master Yi, and it can really easily go into 4 Mystic at level 9. The win condition from this build is often YASUO 3, but you can look to make your Master Yi 2 and stack items onto him from Azir and have him be the main carry. If you're able to get a spatula and turn Azir into a Blade Master, you can replace Aatrox or Master Yi if he isn't 2-starred yet. Poison and CC will be a lot of trouble for you, as well as anyone stacking full items on a front line to bait the YASUO. Crystal is both good and weak into it, as Taric can counter a lot of the damage, but YASUO does hit multiple times, which can whittle away the health of Crystal units. Next up, we have late game Rangers. While 4 Rangers is perfectly viable, 2 Rangers in the late game allows for a lot of flexibility with the build. With Twitch and Ashe as your 2 main Ranger carries, you're able to run Poison and Mystic by dropping the Varus and Kindred, while you still have a strong front line due to Taric with Crystal. If you manage to hit every upgrade, in particular Taric 2 and Singe 2, this composition is likely going to secure you a W. The issue with Rangers right now is that they are super contested and require you to hit expensive champions like Taric and Singe. Karma is a must if you're playing 2 Ranger, as the attack speed buff makes up for the lack of 4 Rangers. This build doesn't lose too much in the late game, so your only concern is going to be a YASUO composition sniping your carries. Work around this by giving Taric full items and only 2 items to your main carries. For the last late game composition, we have Summoner Assassin. Z2 is the win condition in this build, but there are 3 ways you can look to play this build in the late game. Azir carry, Zed carry, or Kha'Zix carry are all viable options. What it really comes down to is what items you're able to find and whether you're able to hit a Z2 or not. If Kha'Zix is your carry, give him an RFC, Bloodthirster, and a defensive item like Quicksilver and get in 3 Assassin. Azir, of course, will want a Rage Blade, but Deathcap and Jeweled Gauntlet are strong choices if he's the main carry, and combo him with 3 Summoners and Karma. Zed will want both Assassin and Summoner buff, with Redemption, Bramble Vest, and Dragon's Claw being great items to give him. If you find a spatula, it is good to turn Azir or Zed into a light and play Soraka as one of the mystics for 3 lights. Primarily, this build is weak into poison, so it will often struggle into Rangers, but if you do get a Z2 fully stacked with items, you're looking at a good chance of finishing in the top 2. That is going to be it for today's video. Now that we have a better understanding of this ranked meta in patch 10.3, let's go out and climb the last few days of the patch. What have been your favorite comps in 10.3? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe the video, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching Giant Slayer TV.